with our first fight on the UFC 296 pay-per-view, we have Vicente Luque taking on Ian, the future Machado Garry, at the welterweight division of 175 pounds. Now, if you haven't heard about it, just search Ian Garry Wag, search Ian Garry Cuckold. You can search Ian Garry Wife. You can search whatever you want. But there's been a lot of drama circulating MMA Twitter, MMA media, anything UFC and MMA about Ian Garry. And there's a lot of just a lot of hate, to say, as he put it on his Instagram yesterday, surrounding him from fans as they found out what has been going on with him and his family life and all that. It's a lot of noise, and he's not handling it well, I would say. He shut off his comments on Instagram. He just turned them back on yesterday. But I would say that for how much he has not been handling it well and continues to just lean into it, it's going to be amplified come the press conference this week. And I cannot wait to watch it. That will be one that I pop some popcorn for and watch. And it will be an instant classic, because not only are we going to have Ian Garry out there, we're also going to have Colby out there. And we're also going to have Paddy the Batty out there. There's a lot of names that are going to be on stage. And it's going to be quite entertaining to watch. Now, I think Garry has looked absolutely dominant his last two times out, putting the drama behind us here against D-Rod and Magny. That judo background paired with his shoot boxing camp that he has now been that's been his home base down in Brazil with them. But he has bounced around a bit, where he was at Kill Cliff before shoot, and then shoot's kind of home base, but he does have a nomad approach where he has gone and trained at tons of different gyms. And that's what has also garnered a lot of hate towards him, because other fighters are annoyed with it, don't feel that it's right, because a lot of them believe that their camp is home. Those guys they train with, that is their second family. And the other piece is that he's apparently caused a stir a lot of these gyms. And we've heard Leon Edwards talk about it, where Leon claimed this week that he hit him with the headshot dead head kick that he landed against Usman. And that put Gary's lights out apparently in training. Like, there's a lot of just negative stuff swirling around him, where I want to almost just pass it off to you to talk about the styles, because I could go on and waste our entire 5 minutes talking about the drama. And I think that's going to weigh on him, as it did similar to Paddy Pimblett in his fight last year against Jared Gordon, where there was tons of drama with Paddy. It weighed down on him. Any man, unless he has the mental fortitude of, of God himself, I don't know how he's going to be able to handle all that pressure coming in.
Yeah, I mean, he's got all the hype behind him and more. All the hype that Paddy had last year, he's got now on his shoulders. Paddy is an afterthought almost in this card, which is wild to say, because he's fighting Tony Ferguson. I mean, as big a name as it gets in MMA. But with all the headlines recently, like you said, and all the hype behind Ian Garry, I mean, he's 13-0. He's 6-0 in the UFC. And with each fight, they've eased him into the UFC stylistically to try and build up that profile, which they might regret a little bit now looking back at it. But they have eased him in with some favorable matchups. And then the last three fights have all been guys that are tailor-made for Garry to have success. With Kenan Song, not the most durable guy. Will give you a decent test, but not the most. Daniel Rodriguez, good striker, not the best, but still looks good, and is still a very good fighter. D-Rod is a very good fighter. And then Neil Magny in his last fight. Is just the cornerstone guy for win and you're ranked. And that's where we're at right now with Ian Garry. But when it comes down to each of these guys, they've got so many different elements to their game. Both of these guys are so insanely talented, and that's what you get when you're at the top 10 of such a deep division like welterweight. Everyone is at least skilled in every facet, whether it be wrestling, grappling, striking, clinch work. They're at least capable in each area. Whether or not they're elite's a different story. Now, Garry came in with very, very good wrestling, ground and pound, and then obviously very, very good striking, especially at range. Luque has been able to get it done on the feet, on the mat, with 19 of his 22 wins coming by finish. Those basically split down the middle between knockouts and submissions as well. This is a big step up for Garry. Like, Vicente Luque is definitely on the downward swing in the UFC, but not really that hard. I mean, his last 7 fights, he won the first 4, beating Nico Price, knocked out Randy Brown, knocked out Tyron Woodley and Michael Chiesa, which Tyron Woodley on his later legs, same with Michael Chiesa, ended up losing to Bilal Muhammad and Jeff Neal. That Jeff Neal win, if y'all remember it, Jeff Neal just pummeled him into submission. I mean, he couldn't take any more damage in that fight, and Jeff Neal just had the gas tank to go for days. But then he came back after a long time off, a year off, and dominated RDA, a legend of the game. Older, but still doing well. And we might go a minute over here to the fans that are watching on YouTube, but also on Spotify or Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. But he looked really good in that fight, and I really applaud him for taking all that time off after the damage because we saw that he wasn't taking it as well. He had some concussion issues. He said, hey, let me reset. Let me take care of my body. I'm only 32, and I've got some decent tread on the tires. But both of these guys at their heart are offensive guys, and their defense is questionable. What I think we're going to get in this fight is a fired-up Ian Garry that could fall into some traps from Vicente Luque. And the reason that I'm not picking a side is because I'm going fight not to go the distance. I think this is a fight tailor-made for a finish, whether you're going the out-of-the-octagon angle with Ian Garry and all the hype behind him and distractions or affecting his mentality and whether or not he wants to be more aggressive and prove people wrong. Whatever it is, you're getting two guys that are offensively minded and have plenty of defensive holes to where either person can get finished. I think fight not to go the distance at -150 is my play of the night and one of my favorite cards or one of my favorite bets of the past number of cards that we've had. And so I've got that for 3 units. At -150 odds. So
the ever so rare 3-unit play from Rick. That's awesome. I did not realize you're getting a 3-unit one on this one. That's awesome. I also was going with fight not to go the distance. I'm going with 1 unit here. I agree with everything you said. I think that there is so much around this. And I want to almost touch on like Vicente Luque at one point was that hot up and coming prospect. Now he was not tailor-made by the UFC to put on this pedestal where they've continued to amplify him. He did not have as smart of a marketing team around him where Ian Garry's been filming his every move like it's the Last Dance documentary, even though the kid is only 26, 27.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's 26. And he's got people filming his every move and putting it on Instagram. And he is making a documentary apparently. So Vicente Luque once, I'm starting to ramble. Vicente Luque once was that guy in this division where he was one of the big up-and-comers. He had that slip against Stephen Thompson. It happens. And then went on that 4-fight win streak and then had those last 2. I am a little worried about, like, Luque's time off, but I do – and because he had, like, a brain bleed thing he was dealing with. That stuff worries me a bit, but if he wasn't good, the UFC would not let him fight because a brain bleed, that's serious stuff. The phenomenal Muay Thai is what I'm excited to see. 13 finishes inside the UFC for Luque. I agree with you, Rick. I think it's going to be a lights out kind of night. Who do you pick to win the fight, though? Because we have to at least give a pick. I'm going to go with Garry, even though I don't want to. I think that he is going to ultimately win the fight. It will be awesome for continuing to propel him into MMA heights from a media standpoint and building that villain story up. But I do have him as the pick, even though we both say fight not to go the distance.
Yeah, I mean, I pick Garry too. I think that range and some of the damage that he might be able to inflict on an aging Luque is going to do enough for him. I do think, like, contrarily to your point earlier about the comments, I think that turning the comments off was possibly a good idea for him to say, hey, you know what? We've got 2 weeks until camp. Let's focus in. I don't need all this side stuff. Let me get in with my camp and make sure that I'm fully prepared for this fight. And as we get into the week of, then we can start to do some of the marketing and promotional stuff that you have to do anyways. So I think that it was probably smart, and I'm sure he had people in his ear telling him to do that. And I think that he's able to get the fight done and continue to build up that brand, like you said. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if Vicente Luque slept him on the way in. So it should be an incredible fight.
Yeah. My last thing, and I hope it wasn't Photoshop because I'll sound like a dumbass, but Terrence McKinney did tweet out a picture of a giant cold sore on Ian Garry's lip. And I hate that. It happens to me sometimes too, right? But it is I think he definitely is stressed out because that is a big thing that happens to you when you're stressed. So I think there is a lot on his shoulders here, to my point, where Luque is the value play, where if you're going to take a side from a betting standpoint, you want to take one side or the other, take Luque. Plus 300, that is awesome, awesome, awesome value. Actually, fuck it. I'm going Luque as well as a play for half a unit. But I am picking Garry to win the fight. Rick and I both have fight not to go the distance. He's got it for 3 units. It is his play of the year because we only have a couple weeks left of the year. Keep it locked in with us as we go on to Patty the Batty taking on Tony Ferguson.